Well, hello there, and a very happy hump day to you. Steve Hook with you. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to the Right Hook. Glad to have you with us. We got a big show today. As we always do, we're going to be talking about, we're going to be talking about this report that a lot of people have been talking about, including President Trump, done by our buddy Ryan Mauro over at capitalresearch.org, Capital Research Center. So we're going to welcome Ryan to the show. And of course, as always, okay, there he is now, right in the middle. And there's my buddy Michael Lauber. Hello, gentlemen. How are you both?
Oh,
Doing all
living the
right.
dream.
Living the dream. That's all we can do.
The
Good to
the
see you,
dream is
Ryan.
being on the show.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it's wonderful to have you again, brother. I mean, I've known you forever and a day, and when this story broke, for I mean, let me just ask you this: for those of you who don't know, Ryan wrote a piece that got ended up managing to find its way on the Resolute desk in front of President Trump. President Trump reads the report that you wrote, Ryan, and is now taking investigative acts against the Soros organization, most notably Open Societies and all the other ad hoc groups that he funds, which is kind of just a way of laundering money into the hands of some very bad people. And your report did a hell of a job of kind of connecting the dots. Did you have any idea when you drafted this report and posted it online that you were going to get this kind of response to it? First of all,
I knew it would deserve it. I had grown cynical and disappointed over the many years that we've known each other. How many times have I released things that I thought should go to the top, and then like nothing happens. So I wasn't confident that it would happen, but I knew it was deserving. And So what happened was that Charlie Kirk was martyred. So it's a very emotional time, and I had this report already developed and was just kind of going through the process at Capital Research Center where I work, and it was obvious that now was the time. And so I reached out to Glenn Beck, who I know from other things that we've done together. And amazingly, he said that he was guest hosting Charlie Kirk's show on the 1 week to the day of Charlie's passing. So it just couldn't have been a better time. And that's why I said this was the beginning of the counteroffensive. And I didn't realize how much of a self-fulfilling prophecy that was, because it really went viral on social media. I used my own contacts to make sure that it got to the highest levels I could possibly get it to within the administration. But they receive a lot of things, so you never know. And then the New York Times breaks the story that the Justice Department, specifically the Deputy Attorney General, had issued a directive to the attorneys' offices in 6 states, telling them to prepare probes into Soros and the Open Society Foundations. That's his billionaire nonprofit empire. On the basis of this report, like they actually said, well, what's your evidence for launching this investigation? And he said, this report.
wow. And let me just, for those of you who have not read the report, and I wouldn't blame you because it's very long, but it's very detailed. And once you kind of get into the nuts and bolts of it, you realize, boy, howdy, George Soros is one evil son of a bitch. That's why we decided to call the show, could this be the beginning of the end for Darth Soros? But the report starts out like this. Since 2016, George Soros' Open Society Foundations, now run with his son, Alexander, has poured over $80 million into groups tied to terrorism or extreme violence. So that right there kind of comes right out and grabs you. You throw the terrorism word, extreme violence. Now, this isn't just Islamic terrorist. We're talking about domestic terrorism here. Antifa, Black Lives Matter, and all these other hardened left-wing causes, correct?
Right. I mean, that's the type of headline that if I saw that somewhere, I would have immediately said that's garbage, because there's so many people that exaggerated George Soros's influence and power over the years that my reflexive answer to everything was like, no, that's probably fake. And usually I would probably be right, because people made it sound as if everything anyone did that they disagreed with was puppeteered by George Soros. But I looked into this because I was mapping out the anti-Israel network in the U.S. And time again, I was finding that when I was looking at the financing, Soros's name was coming up. And I realized that a lot of the reporting on Soros came in drips and drabs. And I thought, oh my God, I couldn't believe it when I realized no one had actually gone through all the thousands of grants. and taken that months and months and months to actually get a final number, a final handle on it all. It was like people would find one grant and then write the report, and it would be a blip on the radar and then go away, and then people wouldn't stitch it all together. And so I went through it all. It took a massive amount of time, but it was so worth it. And that's the number I came up with, was based on his own records from his own website, over 80 million to 54 groups that are either domestic terrorists on U.S. soil, meet the FBI's definition of domestic terrorists, or are pro-terrorism, like they love October 7th, either in the United States or around the world. And his website says this is just what he's comfortable telling you about. That
Wow.
releasing the information can jeopardize the safety and the functioning of a grantee or open society. They're not putting it on the website. So this is the evil that he is so feels so empowered to tell you about. So what are they hiding?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, maybe that's what these probes are going to get to the bottom of.
That's what I hope. And so what the defense is, well, there's going to be a few defenses. The defense so far, the Open Society, they put out a public statement saying, we do not finance terrorism. This is people trying to take away our right to free speech, which is the same answer they've given in the past, where they just say, well, what's your rebuttal to this substantive information based on your own filings? And that's not true. That's not
trust
true.
me,
Okay,
bro.
well, what about that's not true? Like, there's no substantive discussion whatsoever. And by the way, like one of the recommended actions, the one that's the easiest by far, is revoking the tax exempt status, because the IRS code says that a tax exempt group cannot engage in or encourage or plan or sponsor criminal activity. It's right there. And so they're trying to prep the ground to make the argument that free speech means that you get a tax exempt nonprofit status of your own. That is a privilege. It is not a right. We are not stupid, and no one's going to fall for it. They know that they're screwed, so that's why that they're going to deploy that argument. But the other thing is they're going to say, oh, well, it was a mistake. We aren't responsible for what these groups do with the money. And in some of these cases, these are like Hamas-linked groups that have a human rights orientation. So if you want to bend over backwards, maybe you could say that's true. But Center for Third World Organizing, that got like $400,000 from them, like that's all they do. All they do is subversion and criminal stuff. So you can't even use that. So I mean, to any fair-minded person, I mean, they're screwed. Whether Soros and all them could get locked up, I don't know, because I don't know what they'll find. But in terms of the IRS code, I mean, there's no way they can get out of this one if the will exists to have it taken away. They can't win.
Exactly. And yeah, that's my big takeaway is, whether or not Soros goes to jail or not, it's not to say that it's irrelevant, but shutting down this this giant organization that's essentially laundering money through all these little NGOs. We watch it matriculate out to all their little soldiers on the ground, but shutting down that operation, especially like Umbrella, Umbrella Capital or Umbrella Research or Umbrella Advisors. And, that's the one that not just... Yeah, Arabella, sorry. That's the one that not just Soros launders money through, but also Bill Gates has shoved a large amount of money through there. Same with Reid Hoffman and many others, not just billionaires, but other millionaires that are financing a lot of these operations.
Yeah, what about the people that donate with their Social Security checks? Like, it's easy to focus on the billionaires, but what about these poor people that they don't know or have the time to do the research that I did? So they give some money because they think it's going to go to feed some kid who's starving. So they take $25 out of their Social Security instead of, going out for a dinner. They don't have much money, and then it goes to this stuff. And I said on another show, I'm like, if this money was redirected towards things like, I don't know, helping Palestinians genuinely pursue peaceful ends, you'd have peace in the Middle East. Instead, It goes to creating a marketplace for anti-Semitism and anti-Americanism that makes the world worse for everybody. Except for George Soros, because he likes to say, and he openly says this, his ideology is himself. He admits that he has an insane God complex, and he has said it several times.
Yeah, well, I'd say it's more of a devil complex, but that's just me.
Yeah.
Now, now here you go. You've got Soros's Open Society and his son Alex, who apparently is even worse than George Soros. Although how mini-me could be worse than the big man Soros is. I don't know how you could possibly make that. I mean, I guess it could be, but George Soros is bad enough. But so this is not only going to dry up open societies. Perhaps it'll really kind of get. They'll probably. I would think they're probably kind of battening down the hatches there right now, probably being very careful with where they send their money because they know people are going to be sniffing around. But once you do that, Ryan, not only do you defund crowds like Antifa, which it's just an idea, it's not an organization. Yeah, horse shit. We've seen them. We've seen them everywhere. Did some of this money kind of go towards those mysterious palletfuls of bricks that just all of a sudden happen to appear on street corners the day before a planned riot? I mean, is this the kind of money that they're spending? I mean, I'm sure that not all of it is earmarked by open societies, but they probably give them a blank check and say, whatever you need, here's the money. Is that the way it works?
I don't think so, actually. It looks like those individual militants, they'll raise money just through like Cash App and things like that, because that stuff is cheap. That's not what Soros and people like him want to spend their money on. They're there for the big ticket stuff, for the real expensive stuff. And what's the expensive stuff? It's staff. It's the ecosystem.
Yes.
All of that becomes inevitable if you create the ecosystem of hate. That's the expensive part. And so that's what costs money. You have to have staff organizing, staff to manage social media, staff to make all of this stuff popular and normalized. And by the way, I'm willing to bet, and in fact, I'm tempted to investigate this in a more thorough way. If you look at these groups, how much money they made, what their revenue was before October 7th and after, and what their salaries were, I bet you would find that these anti-capitalist warriors are the dirtiest capitalists out there, because anti-Semitism is a business model.
Yes.
Yeah. There's a lot of money in Jew hate.
Real quick,
they make their living. I can't emphasize this enough. These groups that receive this money, they make their living doing this, and their fundraising increases the more crap they stir up, because that's a fundraising pitch.
Yeah. And real quick, these mysterious pallets of bricks. I remember right after 2020 that, I wish I could remember what reporter it was that was looking into this, but they contacted some of the companies that delivered them, and they were all, of course, paid for with disposable credit cards with origins all over the country. So it wasn't one specific person. It was somebody's credit card from, I don't know, Oklahoma, buying a pallet full of bricks for $700, having it delivered in front of a certain business. Somebody else does the next one. But yeah, to your point, Ryan, too, like there are people like, I keep bringing up this company in California that was handing out the riot shields and the bionic face masks in California. Their stated purpose is to help deliver medical care to the homeless. So I'm sure there's a lot of people that have a legitimate fraud case against them, because when they donated there, they thought that's what they were supporting. They didn't think they were going to help support ICE rioters. Now, I'm sure some people did, depending on the connections with the organization, but I'm sure their average donor probably thought they were going to help people that needed medical care that otherwise couldn't afford it get what they needed.
Now that's an idea. If we can find some people who donated and didn't realize it was going to that stuff, just even if it was represented in a false way. I don't think you have to necessarily say, because it'd be hard to say, oh, well, your donation went specifically to this item. But if you're just pitching it as, oh, well, this is purely about taking care of the needy, but then you find out even just through their website that there's other stuff going on with that money, maybe there's an argument for lawsuits there. Maybe there's an argument for lawsuits for the victims of this type of stuff.
Yeah.
I know the Justice Department, the Civil Rights Division, filed that lawsuit against some chapters of American Muslim, or a chapter of American Muslims for Palestine and the Party for Socialism and Liberation for harassing Jews. So if that's successful, then I can see that being a model going forward. I have a long list of pretty easy ideas that the administration could pursue, as well as just average activists could pursue, that would hurt this overall infrastructure, not just of Soros, but everyone else involved in this stuff very rapidly. So a lot of this talk about going after material support of terrorism and even arson, I saw New York Times was saying they're looking at. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. You don't know what you come up with when you go through the emails, because there's a strong enough basis. But I prefer to keep the conversation on the IRS code and some of this easier stuff, because I just don't want to get sidetracked. Pursue everything, but I don't want to forget that you've got them. I don't know. I assume I'd say you got them by the balls in a few areas.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So in other words, keep your eye on the big picture, eye on the prize. I'll tell you something. You could not have had a more willing man in office when you drop this report, because Trump is obviously going after these people. People say, oh, Trump is so vindictive. He's using the DOJ to weaponize the government agencies. I'm like, oh, just shut up. we've all watched it over the last decade. If I were Trump, I'd be going after everybody too. But this is more nefarious because, as you rightly point out, a lot of people that are donating to these groups think that they're donating to help poor people that are homeless or on the balls of their ass. They don't really have much. They need the help. And in reality, it's going, maybe a little bit of it is siphoned off for that. Who knows? I don't know. But I know that a lot of it is going to foment dissent and disunity. And that's where Soros comes in, because that's where he makes his money. He makes his money by destroying, well, currencies. He's a currency manipulator around the world, has been for years. And disunity helps him out. So he's an evil SOB. But, you know, Ryan, Trump, before he went after this, before and thank God, if my man Ryan Mauro is in part or in large part even responsible for bringing down Soros, I will be shouting that from the rooftops, because I'm so proud of you for this report. But before this report, they went after USAID. And I think they are starving the Democrats out. I mean, you take USAID and George Soros out of the mix, where do the Democrats get their money anymore?
Here's how I would phrase it. I'm always careful, and I genuinely emphasize this. If I thought this was an effort to eliminate the Democratic Party and the left from civil society, I'd fight against it.
Yeah,
but
I would too.
I mean, I'm a political independent. I don't care about these political games. But if somebody is financing the destruction of my country and making us hate each other, I don't care if you're right or left, whatever. It's just Soros was a big name and the money led there. And you know what? If a particular political party or candidate suffers and has a disadvantage because the people who back them are involved in this type of crime and this type of evil, well, that's just where the chips fall, you know? And I would say the same thing if it was on the Republican side. So it's, and by the way, a lot of these groups that Soros and these groups fund, they say just as bad things about the Democratic Party, about Biden and Kamala, and about destroying them. Even say that they're not liberal because they say they're leftist because they're so radical, that it's comparable to what they say about the Republican Party. So to me, like these Antifa people, if you call them a Democrat or like a liberal or left winger, they want to kill you.
Yeah,
so because they're nihilists is what they are. I mean that's who they are.
They're anarchists, and like they're very big on gun rights. Like Antifa rhetoric when it comes to government is like almost radical libertarian. It's like no government or minimal, and then far on the other side, you know, a social, you know, every anti-police and things like that. And I say the same thing about the so-called far right with the white supremacists, where people say, "Oh, that's far right." How is it there? There's nothing conservative about what white supremacists believe, especially because most of them are open fascists. That's big government. That's the opposite of conservative. So this left-right thing is being exploited by people like Soros to make it sound like Trump is acting like a dictator to destroy civil society. But that's just people like Soros who actually aren't genuinely liberal or genuinely progressive, exploiting the fact that we simplistically look at everything as a right versus left issue.
Yeah.
Well, two things real quick to your point. First, Ryan, that, you know, Soros and a lot of these entities that have been funded through open societies and other organizations that he controls, you know, that really is what's driving the Democrats off the cliff. The DSA and everyone else that want these more radical ideas that his organizations tend to push. But also to your point there, Steve, you know, we also got to look at, you know, the Democrats are going to be facing a massive cash flow problem. We already talked about how their donations have essentially evaporated after they paid off Kamala Harris's bar tab. They only had $15 million left in the bank. They're not getting money from their donors. And we also have this Act Blue investigation going on. That's $800 million in illegal foreign donations. And they're going to have to pay that back, which means they're going to be operating at a deficit going into the next probably 2 election cycles. So they're going to be broke. They're going to be out there next to the homeless guy begging for your pocket change just to get on the ballot.
Yeah,
Did you
it's
see
not
the
going
New
to be
York
easy.
Times report where they're simulating the population growth with the electoral votes and how Congress, the makeup of how that's going to change? They said by 2032, I think they said that the Democrats could win Nevada, New Hampshire, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and still lose.
Wow.
Like you're
Well,
not like
incredible.
I mean, like what are they gonna do to possibly like I don't know how you can change things enough to
Well,
survive that.
well, let me just say this real quick, kind of on that, because right now we are in the middle, and I don't give a damn what anybody else says. It is the Schumer shutdown. He shut this down. And Schumer shut the government down because Schumer is petrified of AOC primarying him. Now, if Schumer were from, oh, I don't know, North Carolina, he wouldn't have this problem. But unfortunately, Schumer is from New York, and New York is filled with a bunch of abject morons when it comes to politics. They're all far left. So the only person that can beat Schumer in New York is somebody that's further left. That's AOC. And it seems that what Chucky is doing now is completely caving to that particular wing of his party, which seems to be the majority of the base now. It's very, very strange. And I know we're kind of getting off on a side note here because this isn't your article wasn't really about politics per se, but it just so happens that it all kind of comes together, doesn't it? Because we've been looking at Soros. I remember 10 years ago, the left was all about the Koch brothers. The Koch brothers, the Koch brothers. The Koch brothers didn't have squat on George Soros. I mean, his fingers are in a lot of pies, including, and I'm going to quote, I want from your article, the Ruckus Society. Tell me about the Ruckus Society, Ryan. What are they all about?
They're a bunch of terrorists. So basically, they're an anarchist group that was founded by the founder of Earth First, which is an eco-terrorist group. So they create this entity, and their website and the materials include instructions on how to commit terrorism, burn buildings, and things like that. Like no one should be connected to them in any way. And yet here you have money going from Soros to Center for Third World Organizing, which brought Ruckus Society into their network. So they merged together. And these other groups that are funded by Soros that are a little bit more careful with what they say they want to do, what they'll do is they'll put together these activism toolkits, which normally is just like advice on how to talk to people, answer questions, real basics for a protest. And so people don't even look at them because it's like looking at like a movie ticket receipt. Like it's like, well, what? There's nothing there. But I looked at them, and aside from some hints at supporting October 7th, what I started to see was, with different degrees of boldness, they would link to the website of Ruckus Society and other anarchist websites. So there might be a group where all sounds lovely, and they say, to learn more about how to organize a protest, go to this link, and you click open the link, and you'll go to a nice link about how to have a good email list or something like that. It'll be hosted on the Ruckus Society website, so that anyone who goes to it, they could have chosen a million websites, so that they send you there so that you see in the sidebar all the instructions on how to commit terrorism. That was one of the more slick tricks I've ever seen. Others are more blatant and actually will say things like, here's how you do economic sabotage, here's how you block roads, here's the resources from the Ruckus Society. But I was surprised the number of groups that quite blatantly engage in that. And by the way, the portion that's the over 80 million that goes to domestic terrorist and pro-terror groups that I track, that goes to 54 groups. About 23 million of that goes to at least 7 groups that are doing domestic terrorism on U.S. soil, inciting it, so in some way materially making it happen. But that's actually an undercount because I want it to be as rock solid as possible. So when I say 7 groups or 7 entities, some of those entities are coalitions. So like the U.S. Campaign for Palestinian Rights, as one because it's one in the most literal way. It's one entity, and I didn't want to open myself up for any type of distraction of criticism. It's actually a network of 300 groups.
Wow.
There's another one that I think is like 60, and that one is promoting Antifa, like very openly to stop Cop City terrorists, and promoting their fundraisers. So the numbers. I mean, I was as conservative as you could possibly be to minimize this so that it was foolproof and no one could say anything. And the vindication for that came in the last New York Times article about this, because even though it was biased and trying to make it sound like my report is opening the stage for the destruction of the Democratic Party at the hands of dictator Trump, what they actually say in there, that the report does not accuse Soros of directly financing terrorist attacks. That's true. I mean, so they properly called the fact that I didn't want to go above, a certain barrier. But what they said was it does show money going to groups that celebrate October 7th, and engage in property destruction on U.S. soil. New York Times said that.
Wow.
So the New York Times essentially said, I was telling the truth. Open Society Foundation is lying, even though they didn't state it. But anyone that follows it and compares what their denial to my report, to what the New York Times report, would see that I won. They investigated, and they said the verdict was on my side. The only area of criticism that they had, it wasn't really criticism. They said, well, groups like Center for Third World Organizing, only 2% of their revenue came from Soros. So they're saying Soros is being magnified as like the boogeyman. And I say, you want to make that argument, God bless you, because that just puts the bigger point of that this is an infrastructure. So if you want to say and tell the world, hey, as bad as you think Soros is, and as bad as Soros is, according to Ryan Mauro Capital Research Center, the problem's actually way worse.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. You're making a pitch for me and the organization I work for. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, Soros has got his fingers in a lot of different pies. And I mean, it doesn't surprise me. Well, money is fungible, man. So if Soros donates 2% to that group or 30%, it doesn't much matter. He's donating to a group of terrorists. And I just don't see how he dodges that bullet. And the thing that, and the reason, and I know, Ryan, because I've known you long enough, I know you don't want to get into the partisanship of this, and I'm not trying to drag you there, but it's damn near unavoidable. And the only reason it's unavoidable is because the Democrats have leaned so far left that they're embracing groups like this. They're defending them. Or they're saying, oh, Antifa's just an idea. And it could be a misguided idea, but it's just an idea. Well, an idea didn't bomb the federal courthouse in Portland, Oregon for 60 bloody nights in a row. That wasn't an idea. That was a bunch of people in blacked out, what do they call that, Michael?
Black bloc.
Black bloc. Yeah, there you go. That wasn't an idea that did that. Those were people, and those people were funded. And this is the thing. I mean, I don't understand how this avoids really screwing Soros and his son Alex, little mini me, and how it doesn't affect Democrats in large, because this is who they're embracing. This seems like a perfect opportunity for the Democrats to jump off this crazy ship they're on and say, you know what, we don't want any part of this. We're getting back to, but I don't know that they have the testicular fortitude to make that jump. But
in my experience, and I assume this is true of some Democratic officials, is that at least most of my Democrat friends, they don't like Antifa, but they are still acting tribally because they think that these are triggered Democrats. They think these are Democrats that just can't take it anymore. And they don't realize that they are anarchists, they are communists, they're Marxists who would destroy them just like they would destroy the Republican Party if they could. And the answer is to ask them, treat them as if they're part of your base, because them actually don't vote. Many of them, if they vote for third party. That's what they did last time around. So they're trying to cast it as if like these are the grassroots part of your base. It's a lie. They're not. And so, I mean, it'll never happen. But if I was ever in the same room as Chuck Schumer or some of the Democratic Party leaders, I would open with a picture I found of an anti-Israel protest where one of the protesters, and one of the groups put a picture of what I'm about to describe on their Instagram, is dressed as a Hamas member with a mask of Joe Biden looking bloodied with red marker as if they beheaded him, and everyone's cheering. And I would say, look, that's who you're embracing. Don't think these are triggered Democrats. They're people that want to destroy you, and they're not going to vote for you. So if you think that you're going to win, I mean, the whatever degree of votes you get from kissing their butts, you're going to lose from the middle, from the center left. So just relegate them to the fringes and don't placate to them.
Well, and that, what you see, and that right there, what you just said, that is exactly why I say I don't get their logic. Because yes, by their very nature, anarchists and nihilists don't give a damn about anybody, and they would just as soon burn the whole place down. But I guess the Democrats' base has shrunk so much that they feel like, well, these are, the enemy of my enemy is my friend kind of vibe going on here. It's Saul Alinsky kind of tactics. What were you going to say, Michael? Looks like you want to chomping
Well,
at the bit.
I think they think these kind of tactics helped them win in 2020 when they basically held the country hostage during the Summer of Love riots, and they were hoping for the same effect now with these violent protesters in front of ICE. But there's a totally different attitude now. After going through the lockdowns, after seeing what was getting the truth out finally, both with George Floyd and everything around that, the country's attitude has totally changed. And even then, I think most people felt like they thought if they were just nice and they were compliant and they bent the knee to BLM and Antifa and everybody else, the problem would just go away. Well, now they've learned that's not the case. And yeah, to your point, Steve, that these people are basically like the kind of people the Joker would recruit in a Batman movie. It's the criminally insane. They really just want chaos and anarchy, even though they consider themselves to be far leftist out there punching Nazis and fighting fascism. The rest of the country's woken up to that is not a fact. That's not the reality on the ground. And especially after Charlie Kirk's martyrdom, that message just doesn't fly. People see that this violence is coalescing on the left right now. It's firmly attached to their party. I don't think that's going to change in the immediate future, especially when you still have people that are mainstream Democrats like AOC and others out there, touting the same message, encouraging more violence. I mean, we've talked about the videos of Maxine Waters talking about getting in people's faces. You don't back down. You get in front of them when you're at a gasoline station. This is, I think, really just solidifying who, unfortunately, the Democrat Party has become, especially over the last 10 years. They're just hyper aggressive. They're violent. If they don't get their way, they don't want to talk about it. It's just chaos in the streets.
Well, Ryan, back to the report, because the report did more than just shine a light on George and Alex Soros and open societies and all that. It really shined a light on the political chasm that we're seeing inside the country right now. And I think that's part of the reason the New York Times picked up on it, was because they realized that, hey, if you go after George Soros and Alex Soros and that money bag, you are absolutely playing with a political bombshell against the DNC right now. I think the New York Times knows that. I think the Democrat Party knows that. Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries, they know. I mean, good God, how many videos do we have to see of Hillary and Bill Clinton and Barack and Michelle Obama arm in arm with George Soros? I mean, he's their sugar daddy. As much as people would say the Koch brothers were all up in Trump and all this, that's simply not true. The Koch brothers, well, there's only one of them now, but the Koch brothers were basically kind of, I mean, if we're honest, they're not really a hardcore Republican conservatives. That you may say they're independents. You may say there's a libertarian streak there. But with Soros, what you see is what you get. He is a destroyer of countries. That's what he does. You said it. He said it himself. He has a God complex. I remember when Trump first ran for office, he said, I'll spend $100 million of my own money to make sure that man never gets into office. And he's damn near done that, and probably more since that time. The implications of this, have you spoken to anyone in the administration? I mean, if we know that Trump saw it, we know the president read your piece. Has anybody from the administration reached out to you, and are you expecting to be hauled before Congress and put under oath and have to give a deposition here pretty soon?
I would love that. I mean, I have so many, and so does my colleagues at Capital Research Center. If they said, show us the groups that are breaking the law and whose tax exempt statuses we can take away and which groups we need to investigate, we could so quickly go in there, and within weeks you could see action start taking place, and it would be like an apocalyptic event for this whole seditionist movement. But have I talked to anyone in the administration? Believe it or not, not really. I use contacts that I have to get the report to the senior most levels that then got it to more senior levels. Glenn Beck openly said that he was going to bring it to President Trump. I have not gotten a phone call from the administration, believe it or not. So everything I've heard has been secondhand or reported through the New York Times. And so that's why I'm a little bit concerned about what might be an overemphasis on the material support to terrorism investigation when, like I said, I've got like 20 different ideas on things that you can do that are much easier. But I hadn't really thought through also, just to compliment you guys, you made a big point that I hadn't really thought through, that if the Democrats go on a losing streak, I could easily see them scapegoating anyone involved in taking down Soros as saying, well, that's why you cut off our money.
Yeah.
And then escaping personal responsibility by saying, oh, well, that'll be a surreal moment for me if that were to happen. But there is a realignment happening, I think, because
Ryan
eventually
Mauro takes down George and Alex Soros and destroys the Democrat Party with one report.
Yeah, we lost USAID. Then they took down Soros. They stopped our money laundering through the Treasury and everywhere else. And now we just can't win without your money and the billions from George Soros.
A big self-own there. That's true. That's a really funny thought. That like if they complain about this too much, they're admitting that they're beholden to a billionaire who's an extremist, which is quite hypocritical and ironic. But I think there's a political realignment that's going to happen. I think that I purposely make sure I spend some hours every day in the Democratic ecosystem. That's partially because I am a political independent. I've voted for both parties, and so I do kind of on a day-to-day basis I sympathize with both sides on certain things. And there is a real fissure on what we call the left, even though I think left and right doesn't exist anymore. And the realignment is going to be eventually this Antifa seditionist pro-Hamas movement. There's going to be a break with your typical Democrat. That's going to happen. It might be if they ever get back in office. It might be then. I don't know, but it's going to break. But at the same time, you're also seeing some things break on the right, where you have people like Candace Owens and Tucker to some degree coming against Trump, who are also anti-Semitic, and a lot of their rhetoric, without realizing it, mirrors the seditionists on the left.
Yeah.
And so what I've talked about for years about that we need to change how we view these things, because it's really the seditionist movement and all of us that are well-meaning against them, and then we vote differently, but it's actually all of us against them. I think you're starting to see that happen before our eyes. It's just people haven't really put the pieces together on it yet. But if this network starts crumbling, I think that's going to become more and more clear. I don't know what that looks like politically, how that changes things. It's just a very interesting thought. But as an analyst, I can tell you that trend is there. For sure.
For sure.
Well, listen, we're gonna have to take a break here, but when we get back, I want to dig just a little bit deeper into this, and also kind of because Ryan, I'm telling you, man, I would not be at all surprised if you get called before Congress to testify, because this report is not only well researched, it's so exhaustive in its research, and the irony of it all is, or the blunt truth of it all is all you did was follow the money. I mean, it's the oldest line in DC: follow the money, and you followed the money, which was provided by Soros' own OpenSocieties.org. And you can tell us how you did all that on the other side, because it's a fascinating story. You're watching The Right Hook. Our guest today, Ryan Mauro from the Capital Research Center, and his blockbuster report, Soros' Open Society gave $80 million to pro-terrorist groups. We'll be right back on the other side of this break to chat a little bit more about that right after this.
You're still looking good.
I'm still feeling good. You know, I've got all your MyPillow products. Mattress topper, bed sheets, MyPillows, towels, slippers, blankets.
I'm interrupted this commercial to do something I've never done before. Get 2 MyPillows absolutely free on orders of $100 or more. I can't do this forever, so get on board with this great sale today. Our best-selling 6-piece bath towel sets or kitchen towel sets, just $29.98. Our famous standard MyPillows only $14.98. Queens $18.98. King size only $1 more. Body pillows $29.98. Multi-use MyPillow 2.0s with pillowcase $9.98. Save $40 on our Spring Percale and Giza Dream bedsheet sets. Any size, any color. So go to MyPillow.com or call that number on your screen. Use your promo code to save up to 80% on all MyPillow products. And when you spend $100 or more, get 2 standard MyPillows absolutely free.
Well, you can't beat that deal. Go check it out. It's a great American company from a great American there, Mr. Mike Lindell, mypillow.com. Go to the website, look at what you want to buy, then call the number 1-800-749-7098. Drop the promo code HOOK and get additional savings. And what you just heard Mike say there, you spend $100 or more, you get 2 free standard MyPillows, and those are about $50 a piece. So spend $100, get $100, and plus get some savings with the promo code HOOK, 800-749-7098. We're back with Ryan Mauro from the Capital Research Center. Now, Ryan, You put this. How many pages is this report? I wasn't even counting them. It's
about
long.
90.
How many?
About 90, and it's not double spaced.
Yeah. So, okay, call it a 300-page report. If it were a Washington-style report, they'd double space the hell out of it and put headers and footers on all of it. But it's a big report, and it's comprehensive. This wasn't just you nerding out one day. This obviously took a lot of time and energy. But I was amazed when you told me off air where you got most of the info. Why don't you share that with us all?
I got it from Soros. I got it from his own filings on his website. That's why I opened up the report emphasizing this is just the stuff he says he's comfortable telling you about. Could I find much more? Sure. With my background in doing intelligence type work, there's all sorts of creative things I could have done. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to just find out based on his own words because he can't really dispute it then. And that's why the New York Times, New York Times did reach out to myself and the Capitol Research Center with some very pointed, good questions about the data that showed they really were going through going through every letter to try to find an error. And I'm glad that they did, because the report that came out ended up vindicating us and basically debunking open society. So I'm fully comfortable if I had to go in front of Congress or anything, because there's no interpretation here. It was time consuming, but one of the easier things I've done.
Well, yeah, when the guy lays it all out there, it's almost an ego stroke for old George. This is where I spend my money. This is how I do it. Never thinking that anybody's going to say, well, you know what? This son of a bitch is describing funding terrorism. I think I'm going to follow a few of these links. And that's exactly what you did. And what does it feel like to know that your report lands on the Resolute desk in the Oval Office?
It hasn't quite dawned on me because I've been so much in action mode of how, like, who do I talk to? What do I do?
Man of action, Ryan Mauro.
That I'll probably end up staring at the ceiling blankly about a week from now once I settle down. But actually, what was more emotional for me was after Charlie was martyred. When I got the report and it dawned on me what I had, and then Glenn Beck said, I had no idea he was going to be guest hosting Charlie's show. And that was going to be on the 1 week to the day of that, and that he was going to be releasing it. That I was uncommonly emotional for that.
Yeah.
Because that was just unbelievable. In so many ways. Because I felt like I could strike back finally. Because in my line of work, you spend a lot of time feeling powerless. Because you can come up smoking guns and and pay a price for it, because it does damage to your social life, to your dating life, to your professional life. And you have very little to show for it usually. But I was so upset at what happened to Charlie. Yeah. And then so to have that happen, be like, well, on the 1 week of that happening, Glenn Beck's going to release this with you. It was like, finally, I get to punch these guys back and make it hurt. And it hurt because now you have these Justice Department investigations. And if it's done the right way and they keep their eye on the ball and hopefully involve outside researchers outside the government, this is just the tip of the spear. Like as bad as you think it's going to be, it's going to get way worse. And that's why I said I'm Glenn Beck, and I'm so serious about this. Any group out there that is rich and is just giving out grants, you want to be lazy, fine. Call me. I will volunteer my time to vet those grants for you, to make sure you're not financing terrorism to the best of my ability. I won't be able to do a deep dive on each one, but I can check it against my records that are extensive. And if you don't do that, then I and everyone else has a right to assume that either you're purposely financing terrorism or you don't care. It doesn't bother you that much. So with that offer out there, no one has any excuses. In fact, I would love if volunteers emailed every left-wing group or even right-wing, whatever. Let them know that I'm willing to do that so that no one has plausible deniability anymore. Yeah.
Well, it seems to me, especially in the case with George and Alex here, that the ends justify the means. I mean, they may have 7 degrees of separation between actual bomb throwing Antifa members, but the money being fungible is finding its way to those guys in Black Bloc, and they're using it. And if Soros is just kind of playing a Pontius Pilate role, I wash my hands of this. Oh, and by the way, here's a check. How many zeros do I need to add to this check? that's guilty as sin as far as I'm concerned. I just
Yeah.
really do hope, now that we've got this government shutdown, that kind of begs a different question. With the government shutdown, are they going to be able to pursue any investigation, or are they going to have to wait until the government comes back into power? I mean,
The people I know that are in FBI and elsewhere are still working. They're not getting paid. They'll get back pay, and there's apparently tax consequences, so they end up suffering, but they still work.
Yeah.
And those that care about this issue, they would work anyway. Because they're in it for the right reasons. So I'm not too concerned on that front. But what I'm excited to see is, because just like you said, there might be just enough separation where they can say, oh, well, we're not financing terror. Although I think with Center for Third World organizing some of these, it's hard for them to even make that argument. But there's enough evidence for an investigation, and everyone has to remember that the verdict isn't based off of what triggers the investigation. It's off of what the investigation turns up. There's enough. And so what's that conversation like between Soros's group and Center for Third World Organizing or some of these other groups? And they say, well, what are you going to do with the money? What are they emailing each other? What do their notes say? Because I understand that they have this kind of like vague description in the grant on their website. But if your group is dedicated to this type of thing, some conversation about it has to take place, because what else is there to talk about?
Yeah.
And so I'm sure there's damning statements in there.
Let me ask you real quick. And I know Michael wants to jump in here, but I just want to ask you this. Has anyone from any of these groups, whether it's Third World Organizing, whether it's Ruckus, the Ruckus Society, whether it's Soros's Open Society itself, have any of them reached out to you with any kind of legal threats or any kind of threats of any nature? And just that you better keep your head down. Have you heard? Because I would suspect that you've already cost George Soros a couple of $1 million in attorney's fees. So feathering your cap for that, you've already made that old Darth Soros bastard spend money protecting his own ass. But have any of them reached out to you with any kind of a threat or just kind of an insinuation of a possible threat?
No, because what I wrote was not an op-ed. Like, how can you sue me for copying and pasting your own grant descriptions? like if they want to be that dumb, and as dumb as some of them are, I don't think they're that dumb. Like, go ahead, give me that gift.
Yeah.
Can you imagine what discovery would be like? I mean, like, can you imagine? I would bring in every single one of my friends to go through every one of their files. Like, discovery would be Christmas on steroids for me. So I'm sure they're aware of that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, to your point, some of these other little internet sleuths have already taken some of your work and connected it to different on the ground groups where the money went through, entity X to entity Y to this NGO to that NGO, and then funneled down to I have a mental block on the name of this transgender gun club from Salt Lake City that indirectly, if you file it down, they got X amount of number for their little tranny gun club.
Gun club too.
That one probably too. Yeah, I saw an article already, though, written up on how that gun club that the Charlie Kirk shooter or his boyfriend, one of the two, the little furry, belonged to there in Utah, and were communicating on their message board that even that got money that was funneled down through Soros initially, and also from, believe it or not, the UN. But again, you're already making people look. And I think somebody like this data Republican, I mean, that's, if I were you, I mean, you should reach out and... Oh, good. Yeah, because she's, an expert, too, at tracking all this stuff down and seeing where it matriculates out to. Because, I mean, I think that's the real consequence. I mean, I'm glad to see that there's going to be a real investigation. I think removing the tax exempt status should be number one. I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think getting some people to help illustrate exactly where these dollars were spent, where they went on the ground, and then we can leave it to the federal government to make the case that it was knowingly done. I mean, obviously that's what all of us suspect, but that this was the intention of spending that money and laundering it through all these NGOs so they can pretend to be hands off, but they know what the results are that they're actually looking for.
Yeah. I mean, I wish, it's too bad. Like, if I had an employee or a partner or whatever who could just aggregate all the information from civilian researchers outside of government, because, man, I love seeing other people take my work and then going a step further and going in all, because there's so many trails, and the intel I'm getting from people is awesome.
Really?
But it's not all brought into one spot. I mean, there's it's got to be hundreds of other groups people have told me about and shown trails to.
Oh, I'm
And
sure.
but I don't have the staff or the resources to put it all together into reports and publish it and give it to the government. But if I had one or two people whose like full-time job was that, where it's just like, look, everyone that's doing anything, just bring it in one spot so that we can give it to the Justice Department and systematically go after this. I mean, the impact would be world changing.
Ryan, I would just say this. I'll tell you who does have those resources. Glenn Beck, for God's sake. So it's a good thing that he reached out to you, because when I saw the report, and this is absolutely 100%. I mean, even before I knew that you did the thing on Charlie's week anniversary of his martyrdom, when I read that report, it reminded me. Remember when Glenn Beck used to have the big chalkboard and he would show you this, and he'd circle this, and then he would draw it to this circle, and then that circle would branch off to 3 other circles, and then, oh, now look at this triangle down here. That's what the report reads like. It's like, my God, this is just a whole blueprint of how this money is, kind of laundered, kind of washed from one organization to this organization. That's Glenn Beck's wheelhouse. I'm surprised that he hasn't reached out to you and said, let's get a team around you and go out and chase this thing down and run it to the ground.
Well, this is strong vindication, because I remember how much he was mocked for that. And that's just because of the way it was demonstrated, but there was no other way on TV to demonstrate it. Like, that's like doing that is the only way you can do it. But this does vindicate all of that. It's not like guilt by association at all, because this is all direct stuff. And so the potential here for change is just really just so massive. So I'm excited about that, and hopefully something happens where everyone's doing such great work that there were to be like a fusion center that brought it all together. I mean, the stuff that would happen would be amazing. And I would add, just again, so that it's not mischaracterized, when I follow these trails, not particularly with Soros, I do come across those white nationalist, anti-Semitic, crazy so-called right-wing groups in the same digital colonies. And so if someone's out there that's
screw
like,
all of them, as far as I'm concerned.
all these people, absolutely. But this is the way to go after because one ecosystem feeds into the other. Let's just crush the ecosystem of hate. Let's destroy the business.
Yeah. Well, Charlie would have loved that, and it's poetic that you would have been there co-hosting his show a week after his martyrdom, and you drop a bombshell like this. Charlie had to be smiling down, saying, ha, ha, we got you now. I'm wondering if, Ryan, are you going to follow up? Are you going to do a follow-up report? Because you have got so much stuff in this first report that it just kind of lends itself to, let's pick at the scab a little bit more. Do you have any intention of doing that?
I have the intention. I would love to. It comes down to issues of resources and time management. And Capital Research Center does a lot of different things that you have to balance a lot of different priorities. So I hope so. We're certainly going to do all that we can, and I'll certainly do all that I can. I can tell you that.
Well, by God, we'll help you to the extent that we can. But I mean, what you've done right now is just absolutely amazing, Ryan. I got to tell you, no kidding, friend. I've been bragging about knowing you. Let me just tell you something. In the last couple of months, I've had 2 people that I know well make it big. One of them was the chick that filmed that couple at the Coldplay concert.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
So I know her.
You know the lady that did that?
The girl that did that is my oldest daughter's best friend. Her name is Grace.
No way.
She's a sweetheart. By the way, so cool. Ryan, you're a Jersey guy. She's from Point Pleasant.
No kidding.
Yeah, no kidding. So she's a Point Pleasant girl. And so I knew her, and I was like telling everybody, you know that video that's gone so viral? Well, I know that. And now here we are a month and a half later. I'm saying, you know how George Soros is about to get his ass destroyed? I know the guy that brought him down.
So
her story is more.
Yeah.
I do have one question for you. So, other than the sort of Soros response of "Nah, bro, that's not true," have you seen like any other defense or anybody else trying to say, "Oh, all this is nonsense," whatever, trying to defend what their organization is doing? Because I really haven't.
No, isn't that? I mean, I guess it isn't weird because it's so rock solid. But I'm used to. There's been times I've done stuff where I release a smoking gun and people will deny it, but they'll make some attempt to make it sound like it's substantive.
Exactly.
I guess they don't have any room to play games with semantics on this one.
Well, yeah.
Well, that's to your credit, by the way.
Thank you. And that wasn't even entirely purposeful. It was just here's what it is, and because the most they can do is just say, oh, they want to take away our free speech and we don't finance terror. And that's the extent of Soros's statement publicly. It was just astonishing. The New York Times isn't going at, no one's going after.
Yeah, but you know what, Ryan? The key word you just said there was publicly. I bet behind the scenes they are freaking. I bet they're spitting bullets. Yeah. I bet they are furious.
You're right. Every group is spending money on attorney. Anyone that receives Soros money now is hiring an attorney. I hadn't thought about that, but you're right. The money that would go to extremism is now being spent on lawyers, that's great, You're
damn right, it's great.
Yeah, it takes the money off the board. They can't finance more literal terrorism on the street because they're more worried about the legal repercussions of what they've been doing. You caught them with their hand in the cookie jar, and even better, you did it with their own words, like you said,
and handed the cookies around. That's the real thing. I mean, they took the cookies and gave them to all of their cookie monsters.
Yeah, and how many donors are going to run from that? So if we keep this going, I think it probably is self-sustaining at this point. There's going to be a lot of people who donate to them and don't realize it and are going to learn it and just out of their own morality are going to say, I want nothing to do with this network. Well, then there are others that maybe are a little sympathetic but are going to say, this is too hot for me. I got a family. I'm running away from this network. So you're not going to see the effects of this for, at least another year and a half when their tax records come out and you start seeing, oh, wait, this group is no longer getting money from Soros, or this group is no longer giving money to Soros's group, or these groups that got Soros's money are not getting money from other donors. Like there's a lot of players that are going to be scared and change their ways because of this.
Yeah, and I did already see Bill Gates is now withdrawn financing Abarella Consulting. Yeah.
I got to give credit to Scott Walter, the president of Capital Research Center, who wrote the book on Arabella in such great detail that I can't even fully absorb it. But I know that people who love this stuff, like it's like the crown jewel. And so that news broke. And I know that he had been talking to people at the White House and people high up about what to do about this. So that was a smart move on the part of Gates.
Yeah. And one last thought there too is, what you're doing, we talk about a lot of times how, the important part is the left likes to call it institutional knowledge. I hate that term, but it's the infrastructure that makes it possible for them to do what they're doing. What you're doing is taking that down brick by brick. And, that's really what's going to be valuable in the long run. We've seen the damage that Soros has done with his foundations and organizations, not just here, but around the world. From currency manipulation to fund all this stuff to, funding riots and funding literal terrorism, in my opinion, overseas. And now it's been brought here at home. But I think the work that you've done to take down his empire, that is
using
quite a
his
legacy
own
to leave.
words. It's that's what's so beautiful about it.
Speaking of his own words, I've got to add this in real quick. So there's a website called Truth Out. It's a media organization that's very Antifa friendly and pro Hamas and you guys have talked about them. They're like a media hub. So after my first report, like this kind of like the predecessor of this one, Marching Towards Violence, which outlined over 150 pro-terror groups that are behind the protests. And then that's what led to me doing the Soros thing. So they're kind of like back to back. This is what an article about that report said. And so the same would be true of the Soros one, except 10 times over. It said that the recommendations and the research in my Marching Towards Violence report is a, quote, existential threat that could easily mean a quick death for most of the nonprofits connected to their cause because their tax-exempt statuses would be revoked. And those that survive, it says, would suffer mass chaos. So they're panicking even before this report came out.
Yeah.
So now it was like that was like the warm up punch, and then we just gave him the knockout, and they've confirmed. They said like this is how you defeat them. They have confirmed it. So
Wow.
yeah, this is the path to go down.
Well, Ryan, listen, man, thank you so much. Folks, I would strongly suggest you follow Ryan on all of his socials. Go to follow him on X and, of course, capitalresearchcenter.org. And you can go read the entire report. It's a long one, but I mean, one thing I liked about it, Ryan, I'll just say this on a side note. It's very readable. I mean, it's a very easy report. It's not like it's loaded with lawyerese and crap. You can, anybody, any man can pick it up and figure out where it goes. Because, like you said, you use Soros's own Open Society's pages and stuff. It's just wonderful. So I hope that we can get you back on here again, my friend, and
Sure.
follow up with this, because I suspect, man, that within the next 6 months or so, especially after this whole government crap, the government shutdown, I bet you're going to be getting you've breathed some oxygen into something here, and the embers are just starting to glow. But I suspect it's going to be a conflagration here before long. It's gonna blow up, and then you're gonna be called before Congress, and then I'll be watching you on C-SPAN.
Yep, and I'll be texting you, making fun of the politicians in the room afterwards.
Yeah, can you believe
I'm
Jamie
just hoping that
Raskin's
you don't
hair?
publish my text.
Yeah,
Perfect.
Yeah,
yeah. Bernie Sanders' breath smells like salami.
yeah, right. Yeah.
All right. Well, Ryan Mauro, Capital Research Center, thank you so much, brother. And I guess that's gonna do it. You got anything else to say, Michael?
Nope. I just want to thank you guys for joining. Thank you, Ryan, for joining us. To the audience, please like, share, and subscribe. Help us to grow so we can bring more people the news the mainstream media doesn't want you to hear. And we'll be back on Friday with even more.
See you. Thank you, Ryan. Take care, buddy.
Thank you.